Many times. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Volleyball Source Podcast. My name is Everett Delorme. It is Wednesday, March 31st. Again, I know I just recorded one, but today I had to talk to this lady in front of me. She is a former national team player. You were part of the national team system, a former national champion with the Trinity Western Spartans, a former pro player as well, playing in Germany and in Finland. And now she is back at home in BC, starting a coaching revolution. It is Vanessa Cornwall. Vanessa, how are you? How's it going? It's been a while since I've seen you. How are you doing?
It has been a while. As I said, last time I saw you was when you were in Richmond a little bit, a few years ago.
No. Like 2000 and maybe 2020. I saw you at her league.
You're right.
In 2020.
Yeah, Dave and I were talking about her league today and how we saw you there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's been great. The last year has been a learning curve for me, just kind of figuring out, going from the playing side of it to the coaching side of it and learning. It's been a lot. It's been amazing. I love where I am right now, and it's made the transition from playing super easy. Not even gonna lie, it's made it super easy. The kids are awesome. I love what I do, and I want to do it for the rest of my life.
So it seems like you've just jumped right into the coaching world, and there's no hesitance, nothing being I wish I was still playing pro.
No, and don't get me wrong, I enjoy playing. I enjoy playing still. I wish we could, and I'm excited for the day that adults can play again. We can kind of get that adult side going. Mm-hmm. But right now I'm all in on the kids, and it's been awesome.
That's great. Well, let's talk a little bit about you first, because I've always been so interested in your path through this sport. Because, and you've talked about it, how you changed your position. Was it going into 18U to be a setter because you thought you would be more effective about that? So I've talked about it with you kind of one-on-one, but I know it's a story that so many of my listeners would love to hear about. So I'd kind of like to know about that decision and how it led to where you are now.
Yeah, so I think when I first started playing, I was definitely a soccer player. I was just an athlete. So I picked up the game pretty easily, and that's something we'll touch on later. But I picked up on it pretty easily, and I played when I started in grade 7. And when I started, I kind of just played a filler role. And then throughout my years, I kind of got stuck in that filler role. So whatever a position a team needed me to play, I would play there.
Dude, I resonate with all of that so much. That was me to the T exactly in soccer as well.
And there's pros and cons to it. There's some positive and there's some negative. But yeah, so I always wanted to be a setter. I was always told whenever I got the chance out of system to take second ball, people would always be like, oh, she has nice hands. Why is she hitting? But yeah, so then finally through Team BC, my experience in Team BC, I got to set a little bit more. But during club and up until U18, I was right side. There was 1 year where I played middle, but that was really young. And then, it wasn't until
middle. How tall are you? Because you're
5'10".
5. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Well, not quite tall enough.
Yeah. I mean, as I'm were you the early grower? Were you at 15 years old, you were 5'10" type thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I've had some height from a pretty young age.
Fair enough.
And then I seeked out a team in U18 where I would have the opportunity to set. And so I got that chance. And the reason I kind of made that change was because I committed to Trinity Western already. So I committed to Trinity Western, and I remember having the conversation with Ryan Hofer, so what position will I be playing? He's like, setter. And I was like, oh, so I should probably go learn how to set. So I left my last year, went to a different club, and I trained as a setter. And that was huge in my development. I think it had to happen. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have got the playing time that I did in university.
What club was that? Were you playing at FEVC?
Yeah. So my last year I did FEVC Blitz in grade 12.
Oh, okay. And you went before you were at Ducks. Is that it?
Yeah, I was with Ducks. There was 1 year where I made Ducks my first year. The second year I didn't make the team. So I went to Focus, and that's when I played middle.
Okay.
And that's another quick story is when I didn't make the team and I went to play for Focus, I was about 14 years old, and I stuck around after every practice and watched the U18 team play. And I think my dad says to this day, that is the reason you were good, was because you just stuck around, you watched the older girls play. Finally, I don't know if you know him, Wes, he does a lot of indoor and beach still out in Vancouver. And he was the coach at the time for that U18 team. And I remember one day he came over to meet my dad, because we had asked if we could watch, and he was totally fine with it. And then one day he was like, "Do you want to play?" And I was like, with girls that are like 3-4 years older than me, sure, why not? So yeah, my dad still claims that as to be like kind of the switch that went off for me.
That Wes Webb?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, for sure. That's great. I love the community. Serendipitously, I'm wearing a Volleyball BC shirt. I promise I did not wear this for you or, to be biased. I just put this on this morning. I did another podcast today. You can check. I'm wearing the same shirt. I promise. But yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of the story in terms of position. And then even when I was at Trinity Western, there was some talk about running a 6'2", but it never happened. Set, and I enjoyed setting. I loved it. And I guess like my long term was to set, so I had no interest in actually swinging when I was there. And then I went to Germany, and I set my whole time in Germany. And then when I was in Finland, I got the opportunity to swing again. So it was a few years later, it came full circle, and I got to swing professionally as well. So that was, in terms of coaching, I'm so thankful for. Like it was just great to be on that side again. But
and I mean, you just posted about it. Was it like today or yesterday? You posted on Instagram how you scored 14 points in a game, and like that's crazy how you can go from being like the starting setter. And I've always known you as a setter when I saw you play for Team BC at the Canada Games, and then for Trinity Western after that, you were always a setter. So I remember that happening at the time, and you posting about it and talking about it. I was like, oh damn, like Cornwall's got some skill out there. I like it.
It really, and I think coaching youth now, I do a lot of work just like in terms of decision making and smart plays, because I found like I'm an undersized attacker, right? So when I'm hitting, I can't just hit straight down. It doesn't work like that. Obviously, there's the odd ball that's perfect set, and I got a hole in the block. Okay, I'll rip on it. But outside of that, when I have a solid 4 hands, I'm going to hit hands. And I find at the younger ages, we often teach athletes to be scared of the block. I want my athletes to hit the block and get comfortable hitting it. So that's been something that I've done a lot of in my gym, just from my experience being an undersized attacker. And I think we have a lot of undersized athletes. That's what we get. We get some mostly undersized, and we get the odd one that's tall. So we're trying to teach those younger ones how to make it.
Interesting. So before we jump into your coaching philosophies, which is like, that's going to be the meat and potatoes here, I do kind of want to chat about your journey, because you just said that like you were always that tweener player, that filler player. What part of that transition to a setter allowed you to become like, from being a player that kind of just fits into where you need to become the most like, the most relied on player on the team? And not only did you do that well, but you thrived at that position. I mentioned your time at the Canada Games. You got a bronze medal there with Team BC. No, silver medal with Team BC. Lost to Team Alberta in the finals in Sherbrooke back in 2013. Won a national championship back at the University of Toronto. Was that 2015?
Yeah.
Yeah. So 2015. How did you make that transition from being a player, that like you just started setting in 18U to leading championship teams?
I think the most beneficial part was that I understood attackers. I understood what they needed, what had to change from one set to another. I understood the communication that was required from a setter. Now, with that said, I also found, because I was that athlete that was like just taken and put as a filler, wherever they needed me, I kind of just shut up and did my job. So on the court, I think that transferred into my gameplay, where I just kind of do my job. I wasn't always I didn't communicate a ton. I wasn't always the most energetic on the court, because I was just doing my job, right? Wherever that was, I was doing my job. So I think that was the toughest part, was that I was always trying to figure out where I was and get perfect at that. And I never got the chance to really find myself on the court, if that makes sense. So I think if I had another 2-3 years, especially after coaching, I have to be that person that's like, at a private lesson, for example, you're one-on-one with a kid. Odds are the kid's a little bit nervous working with someone who has kind of made it in Canada. So you really have to be the person that brings the energy. And I never had to be that person on the court. So I almost think if I had played another 2 years after coaching, I think those would be my better years, because I think I would be more of a presence on the court.
I definitely could see that. I think that's so natural for athletes to get even better after they start coaching. That's why I'm such a huge proponent as like, for me, in an ideal world, as like a 17U, 18U athlete, you should already be coaching, at the younger ages. You should be coaching the little kids. And I mean, that's the way I was when I was sick. I was like 16 years old. I was coaching soccer because, much like you, I was soccer first. I started playing soccer at 4 years old. My email in high school was soccer_guy. I definitely understand that and resonate, and I think it's so impactful when you start coaching and when you start thinking about it. And it's such a known thing too. The best way to learn a skill is to teach it, right?
If you teach it, you know it, right? That's what they say.
100%. And I've seen that light bulb moment with kids when they're helping out other athletes or they're helping out teammates and they start explaining it. They're like, oh my God, I get it. So yeah, it's huge.
It's funny you say that because we actually just a couple of weeks ago, I was chatting with Dave and talking about the same thing. How do we get athletes involved? And like, there's been a lot of talk about female coaches. How do we get them going at a young age? So we actually just the other week started up a coaching mentorship program here. And so athletes it's about 20 hours with me in the gym, just working alongside me, learning drills, learning coaching tactics, essentially just like getting exposed to it. Because we have a lot of athletes that are quiet that are doing it. I'm like, this is perfect for you. You just need to get that confidence a little bit. And so, yeah, they spend 20 hours with me, they get a certificate. And then if they want to apply in the summer for actual positions, they use that towards it. So it's kind of it's interactive. And I love it because I get to spend a few extra hours with the kids on the side as well. I get to
Interesting.
Kind of mentorship as well.
What are the first things that you focus on when you're mentoring these kids?
Yeah, I think the first thing is a lot of them, you have to be 2 years older than the group you're helping with. So a lot of them are helping with like minis. And those, I would say the biggest thing for minis is that I think for me, in the beginning, I honestly had a hard time coaching minis in the beginning. And I think that's a fear for a lot of us is like, how do you play volleyball with little kids? It's hard. You can't just dribble a ball. It's hard. So that was a learning curve for me and figuring out what do they like, what keeps them engaged. So I think with the coaching mentorship crew, the kids that are in with me, it's really teaching them at the beginning. You really just got to get them to like love the sport and have fun. And there's certain tactics that I've learned and kind of teaching them those tactics as to how to do it. Yeah, I think that's kind of the biggest thing because they're helping me with the really young ones right now. So I think that's the biggest thing. The biggest focus is just like, let's get them energized. Let's have fun in here. Let's make it a good experience so they want to come back.
Well, at that point too, you're almost teaching just more so functional movement in a volleyball sense, right? Yeah. You're not even necessarily teaching them how to pass or how to volley and stuff like that. It's more so understanding the movement patterns of the games and understanding how to, move off of each other, but then also understand how to play with a ball in a way that they've never played before.
Literacy in general, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Throwing, agility, moving your feet, like that's all. Yeah, it doesn't need to be volleyball because that's hard and that's the reality.
Yeah, absolutely. It is very hard. So that's super interesting. I mean, we're already into it, so we can just jump right into it now. Your minis, what program? How young does this program start for the minis?
Well, right now, in the winter, we didn't have minis. We went down to level 1, so we kind of have a few levels: level 1, level 2, level 3, and we've added now minis, and that's kind of from 5 to 8, 5 to 9, just newcomers. And we want to get there as early as soccer. Like we're saying, like you said, you started at 4, I started at 5. That's kind of the sport that you get thrown into versus I find volleyball is often
way later.
Any athlete I've spoken to, if I were to ask them, hey, why do you play volleyball? What introduced you to volleyball? Who introduced you to it? It's always someone or something or a sibling or a parent or a teacher. Mm-hmm. It's never the same as soccer where it's like, yeah, I just started playing soccer. I had no reason to start playing soccer when I was 5. It was just, that's the sport you're going to go into. If you were to ask me, why did I start playing? Who introduced me? It was in grade 7. I had a teacher that was like, hey, you're athletic. You're a group of friends. Let's get you guys to play school and then you go play club. I didn't know club was a thing. Right. So it's just not as exposed, I think. And then we also I think the other big issue is just that there's a lack of gym time and a lack of private facilities. Mm-hmm. The reality is we kind of rely on teachers a lot in elementary schools to expose the sport. And I think
which is both great and awful at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah. I love it. They did it for me. So yay, but can we do better?
When I worked at Volleyball Canada, this is literally a decade ago. I remember sitting around the lunch table and the current development or national development coordinator, man of the Doug Anton, was saying, it's great. We have the benefit of everyone being taught volleyball in grade 7 or in school in like grades 2 and 3. And in my head, I was like, well, at that point, I was already playing hockey and soccer, right? I knew what baseball was. I knew what basketball was. Didn't really know what volleyball was. But then second of all, you're getting taught by these coaches. They don't know what volleyball is. So, and then,
that's another good point.
And then the third thing is that you're playing with these rock solid balls. And that, like, because everyone's first memory of volleyball is a terrible one. It's my arms hurt. It's hard. This isn't fun. And then that just turns it off them. So I
not wrong. If I were to pass a few balls right now, my arms would probably hurt too. Yeah. Not wrong. Yeah, we definitely have volley lights, and we have like one that's lighter than that, like some orange and blue ball. I don't even know.
Those didn't exist in the 90s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. So I think, we kind of rely on gym teachers, and then you got to think like after school programs, they kind of run like from 4 to 6 o'clock. And then if you were to run minis at schools afterwards, not in a private facility, it's going to start at 6 or 7. And by the time you're done, it's bedtime for them. Right. And because of that, our priority kind of goes to the athletes that have already played or already have experience. And we focus on the higher performance crew. And those are the ones that get all the attention. Mm-hmm. And you kind of mentioned it earlier. Do we have any coaches that are full-time youth development coaches? Not enough from my perspective. Right. I think we should, you said it before as well, like the teachers that are teaching it don't know the sport. I think our best teachers need to be younger. Like some of our best should be down there with the younger.
I 100% agree with you, because and like throughout my time in volleyball, it's been always such a constant talk, be like high performance. We got to focus on high performance. And at what point are we sharpening like the sword too much, right? At what point are we like making ourselves weaker because we are just focusing on high performance and we're not developing as well? Much like yourself, like I come from like a house league soccer system where at 4 years old I was wearing Timbits across my chest and playing soccer, every single weekend. Much like the same thing as hockey. How do we get that same model? And like that's the thing, is that like from the ages like 4 to 18, you have kids playing hockey and soccer and now basketball as well too, baseball and softball, but at just a recreational level without any aspirations whatsoever to go play university, without any no need to pay all this money and have all these practices to play in the Volleyball BC or Volleyball Ontario, whatever it may be, like weekly. Like why? Like growing up, when I played up until 10 years old, I played house league soccer. It was one practice, one game a week. Same thing with hockey. Why don't we have that for volleyball?
Yeah, it's something that needs to change. And I think the biggest thing is just realizing that having it's not going to hurt us. I think a lot of us think that if we do it, it's going to hurt us. It's going to impact us in a negative way. But the truth is soccer's not hurt because they start at 4 or 5 years old. They benefit from it. We need to realize that we will benefit from starting at a younger age. I think that's where it starts, is just realizing like this is a good thing. This will help us.
And I mean, I think it's important. You mentioned too, using the volley lights, like for so long, like growing up in soccer, we used like a size 3 ball, a size 4 ball, moving up to the size 5. Even before playing 6-a-side, you play with cones and it's 4-a-side. And I mean, I remember a while too, maybe these weren't the greatest, but Soccer Canada made it where it's like scoring goals wasn't that focused on, or to score a goal, you need to like stop the ball in the end zone to prove that you had control. So maybe like I remember coaching grade 3 volleyball for a private school here in Toronto and just being so frustrated because they expected us to play 6-on-6. You'd have 30 kids on the team and you had to rattle them all through, and that was volleyball to them. So no one was having a good experience. You'd get in for your 6 point, your 12 points, miss serve. Maybe you get it over once, and that was volleyball to them. And it was frustrating because at practice we could play 4-on-4, like we could do modified gameplay to allow them to actually play volleyball, and that's where they had fun, not when we actually got to keep playing the games.
Yeah, and I think for me, like what I've learned, it took me about into our 3rd Friday session to realize like they love cones, they love props, they love like just anything to make it fun, right? So we have like these big dots on the ground, and they'll stand at the net and shuffle over, get to the dot, jump up and down, open with their right foot, turn and run. So that we're teaching like the proper movements in the game, right? But it's not as specific as later on. But they'll know the movements, they'll be comfortable with the movements. And when they actually learn it, when they reach a certain age, it'll be easy, right? So I love drills like that involve kind of cones to show where they have to run and how to open up and transition. Just anything that like, again, just makes it a little bit more fun, a little bit more interactive, more movement. Because again, when there's volleyball, the reality is the rally's not going to last very long at a young age if you're not including a bounce or whatever. So the movement has to be there. They have to be engaged by moving. If they're just standing there and the ball, like you're saying, miss serve, it's not fun, right? So I think getting them in there and just sweating, right, finding ways to make them move is really important.
Break it down for us. Like, what do you think are like the best ways to get the movement? Like, what's your go-to drill activity? Like, what is it?
I don't even know what you would call it, touch and go maybe. Passing one would be kind of where you start at the tee line. So one individual athlete starts at the tee line, a coach is tossing over from the other side of the net, and then you have a target on the same side as the athlete that's working. And they kind of run and they touch the corner, and then they run in the court and pass the ball. And it's a fast rotation. Right? If you miss your pass, it doesn't matter. But we're just trying to get you to be aggressive and pass the ball. And it's really getting them to move and kind of, we often make them communicate. So we'll make them like count to, they have to get 30 passes in a group, and they'll just be yelling like 1, 2, 3 as they're going. And it's like, it's heartwarming from my perspective. I love it. When kids are like engaged. I had one girl, we had a Friday Night Lights program, and it was all for, originally it was just athletes with very little experience, only school experience. So we had a few athletes that were very young, and then we had some that were older. And we try to keep them together for a majority of the drills when it's individual. And then when it gets to the gameplay, we'll kind of split them up. And this one little kid, she wasn't super engaged. And then we did one of these drills where same kind of thing. You touch the end line, run into the next cone, touch the end line, pass the ball, run the next cone. And I said, okay, we're gonna do it one more time each. And she was like, yay. And I was like, this is a drill that I wouldn't like doing. If you made me run like that for a minute, I'd be like, this sucks. But for them, they were like, this is so much fun. They're interactive. It didn't matter about the result. Right. And I think that's kind of where you have to like almost distract them from the result and just make them love the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember doing touch 10 with kids, obviously like a modified version of it. And they absolutely loved it because then for them, like, you know, we weren't making them dive. Like we weren't killing them like you would do to club kids or older kids like that.
But we like challenge.
100%. And I always found that if you challenged the kids and made them kind of pass the ball while do something, it took away the why am I blanking so hard? Like the hardness or like the intimidation of having to pass that ball. Because so many times if you just like stand the kid there, like throw them the ball, like pass back to me, it's so intimidating. Like at the end of the day, passing a volleyball it's not an inherent skill that we have as humans. We're not, it's not like catching or throwing. And you have to learn it. And it's an intimidating skill at first. I've always found that if you get them to do it while doing something else, they almost forget about that part because they're enthralled in, trying to touch the 10 balls or exactly like touching the cone or whatever it is.
Yeah, no. And I think like even the other day I had a friend join for the Friday Night Lights at the beginning, just because again, I wasn't super confident with it. I was like, I need some help here. And so she came in at the beginning, and then she came in a few weeks ago. And she was like, Nikki, they're completely different. They keep the ball up, right? So at the beginning, you're starting with these things. You're saying, oh, the focus isn't necessarily on the result. And then slowly, okay, well, you need to pass that ball a little bit higher. Your arms need to be straighter when you pass. Your platform needs to be stronger. You start to add those things in slowly. But if you kind of overwhelm them with it all at the beginning, then yeah, we're training them to be so focused on that end goal, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. How much do you divide it between like structured drilling more or less and like maybe loose gameplay?
At that level?
Yeah.
Oh, at that level, I would say it's definitely more drill based, but I try to make them all fun. Mm-hmm. They're all and the drill base can have competition within them. It's not always just boring drills like pass 30 balls. It's how many can you serve into, like we did some target practice serving. We had a bunch of hula hoops on the ground. You got certain points for hitting it in those. It's all, there's always kind of an end goal. There's always, we try to get some competition in there towards the end of the actual drills so they kind of stay engaged. Then I would say the last, again, the minis, I would say if we're like a 2-hour session, probably lasts like 30 minutes of kind of gameplay, but it's always modified, whether it's allowing a bounce or a catch or something like that. And again, just to see the improvement. And I think they also like to see it too, right? I think that, when at the beginning, we weren't doing too much gameplay, and then finally it was like, all right, let's go. Let's do this. Let's get you guys touching the ball and keeping it alive. And you get penalized if you don't. And even last week, we had some cameras out and stuff, and we were like, this is actually some pretty good ball. Like, it was exciting. So
that's
good things coming, hopefully.
That's awesome. Now, what are you guys doing about net height? Where are you starting with net height and stuff?
So it's funny. I said that recently too. I was like, maybe we should lower them. We've been playing high. We've been playing women's. So we have in our facility
tennis height.
Yeah, no, we drop it depending on what's kind of going on. But we have 6 courts here, and the 3 nets on one side are like all attached. So if I were to drop it, I gotta drop all 3.
Oh, I've been there. Yeah, that's not.
So for me, I'm like, it doesn't bother them. It really doesn't. They don't know it's different. I'm not going to lie. The last couple of weeks, just with, Bonnie Henry's new announcements and stuff, we've gone down to 2 courts just to have more spacing. And when we have 2 courts, it's easy. So we just dropped them last week, the week before that, and they've loved it. They've been having a great time. They're seeing, again, when you train on a higher net and then you drop it, they're like, oh, I can hit it over. And they're loving it. It's great. So yeah, I'd say we've been training them at a higher net. I think when we have like full-time minis, we'll definitely start dropping it. But when we were kind of just starting, it was, let's throw them in the fire. They'll have a great time. And they've been doing great. So
have you done any research into like spike ball and what they've been doing in the Netherlands?
Spike ball, smash ball, kind of the same.
Yeah. Smash ball. That's what I meant. Spike ball. Spike ball is the game that you play with the, bros play in the park on a Saturday.
There you go. We're trying to get that going too. No.
Dude, I actually love spike ball in terms because it's basically volleyball. It's 3 contacts working with a teammate. Instead of going over the net, you go into the net. But it's like for beach camps and stuff like that, it's 100%. It's fantastic. I love spike ball as a warm up for volleyball.
Yeah, no, I had a hard time playing it. A little tiny target, tiny ball, drove me nuts. But I guess it makes you better. But yeah, what was the question before that? Remind me.
Smash ball. Have you done any research? Do you develop anything based off of that research?
We did have a program running on Sundays for a little while. Smash ball, and that's kind of where you train and play. So the first hour is training, second hour is playing. And I think it's great. I just love the kids getting in there and being young and touching the ball. I think it's a good setup for sure. I think we definitely need more touches. Like you're kind of saying, like the twice a week thing versus like an hour of training and an hour of gameplay once a week. Don't think it's quite enough. But yeah, I think it's great. Yeah.
Fair enough.
More the merrier.
Like what other kind of strategies are you guys employing to get more kids involved at a younger age, and how are you seeing that effect? Like, maybe you're not seeing that effect yet follow through. Maybe not you personally, but maybe someone like David has seen that. By the way, real quick, we are talking about David Carrasco, who is the owner of the Volleybox in Vancouver. Is that correct?
Yeah, he's the big boss with the nice setup.
Yeah, and that's where you practice. You can rep the merch a little bit on your chest there. There you go. They are absolutely massive on TikTok. Kalissa is like a legitimate TikTok star now. It's fun to watch.
Mm-hmm. We just, I showed up here yesterday and she was doing a bunch of advertisements and stuff for us. And some of the video quality just looks great. Awesome. I love this place.
You guys are figuring out, but it's been great because recently you guys have been posting a bunch of videos how Bree King was in your gym for a little bit. And of course, she just got 3rd place at the Athletes Unlimited. Kira Van Ryk of the women's national team was in there. I on my Volleyball Source account, that's, if you guys are watching this, go follow Volleyball Source on TikTok. We've got about 40 followers so far, so we're real close to Volleybox at their almost 500,000. I think you guys are at. But you guys, it seems like you guys are building a pretty cool community over there. And I remember last time I talked to David at the Her League right before the world shut down, that was right before the Volleybox opened up. So it's really cool to see that already it's starting to have such a big impact.
Yeah, we definitely, last summer we had a ton of high performance athletes in here from pro, Team Canada, local universities. And it was awesome. And I think that's kind of what won me over. So I was running privates in here last summer, but I wasn't employed by Volleybox. And I just fell in love with the community. It was we'd have kids on in one court, and then you'd have Rio Riley and Kira Van Ryk on another. And to me, that's it right there. And that's what it's all, I think all these things go hand in hand. We're talking about running more minis and getting those involved and focusing on that, but it really does develop to the Brie O'Reilly and Kira Van Ryk, we hope one day, right? So it's not that we're going away from high performance. We're still a high performance facility, but we are going to give more attention to the younger ones who realize that is important for development, especially for volleyball in BC, Canada, and well,
I mean, you can focus on just BC in the lower mainland. I'm guessing it's not really Vancouver technically. It's like more so the lower mainland, Langley.
It's Cloverdale, so the border between Surrey and Langley area.
Okay, fair enough. So it's a little bit closer to the city than say the Langley Event Center or something like that. Yeah,
but we've had Shannon Windsor out here a couple of times. So we're just trying to be interactive, and I find there's not a lot of private facilities for volleyball in general. So it's just a matter of making those connections, making those relationships, and just trying to better each other rather than being so focused on ourselves. Yeah, because it really is about the development and the kids. So why not work together?
Will David's Club Academy be running out of Volleybox once they start things back up?
Yeah, so we're able to run club. So we've been running club for a while. We've had it's a club cohort this year. So we have 4 different club teams, one of which is academy. And they train here Monday through Thursday with one. It was supposed to be a game on the weekend, but it's just a practice slot because we're not allowed to play games. But yeah, so academy is training out of here. Yeah, to answer your question.
Fantastic. That's great. Now back to kind of some of our development stuff. I had to get the plug in there for Volleybox while I had you on, especially since you've been talking about like we do this and we're doing that, and we never really established who we was. But what are your thoughts on 4-on-4 and its possibility of linking maybe up to like a 12U level type thing?
Mm-hmm. More touches. That's the first thing. When you said 4, I hear more touches.
100%.
If you're getting 3 touches a rally, that's 3 out of 4 people touching it versus on 6v6, half touch it if everybody touches it, right? Which isn't always the case. Some people are ball hogs, which isn't a bad thing. I like aggressive athletes. But yeah, I think 4v4 is a positive that you just get the more touches, the better. Like that when you ask like gameplay, do we do gameplay with the minis? Yeah, a lot of it is, it's not 6v6. Right. And it's for the purpose of getting more touches. To me, like I do believe that once you're trained the proper way, it's how many touches you're going to get in the next couple of years. As many touches as you can, whether that be in your backyard or be in the gym, touch the ball. And so I think that's definitely a positive thing for.
Because here in Ontario, we employ like triple ball, which is, I find it's all right, but I find it's very static because you get that first ball just tossed right to you. And everyone's just very staying there. And I know some people love it because, yes, you are taking away the serve. But for me, I think I would love to see us more go like a soccer route where like you go from 6s to 12s or 6s to 11s, right? And you play from like mini volley. Like I think it'd be feasible to run volleyball from like 8U to 12U 4-on-4 on a badminton court, like badminton net. And I think that you could legitimately run like, you could almost have it with a league where you have like teams of 6 or 7 and they get their same color jerseys. They get Timbits across if we can get Tim Hortons as a sponsor. If not, maybe we find, maybe Dunkin' Donuts will jump in. Who knows? Dunkin's huge on TikTok, so maybe we get Calissa talking to Dunkin', right? It's already in the works. Don't worry, David, like get it going, right? But that to me, right, like right now we got focused so much on high performance, and to me, one of the biggest reasons that we've gotten to our women being some of the best in the world in beach volleyball. Our women's national team is on the up. Look at what our women are doing around the world right now with Kira Van Ryk, Alexa Gray, Bree King, Shauna Joseph, like Jen Cross, the list goes on and on. Our men's national team is a top 8 team in the world and has changed. Like we have done enough on nothing. Right? Like we have no base to play off and we've had all of the success. Imagine if we doubled our user base at those younger ages, even if 75% of them didn't keep on playing until, a college or 18U or whatever it may be, that other 25% would still have a massive impact on what we're producing in terms of quality at the high performance level.
And you kind of said it when we were chatting earlier, just we're putting all our eggs in one basket. And I kind of said, well, why not have more eggs? We could just have more eggs.
100%.
Like, I think that's the angle, is just bring it, like, let's have as many athletes exposed to the game as possible. And I think that's something that people are starting to realize, and people are starting to try to implement a little bit more. And I hope over the next kind of 5 years, decade, that we start to see the benefits of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, like, on a completely selfish side too, it's a great idea for clubs to be getting into the house league model, where you're just trying to get in as many kids as possible, like underneath the age of 10, because it's going to be a cash cow. You don't need to, like, you can pay coaches like a decent amount, but if you've got 45 kids in a gym spread out across 4 courts, like, that's gonna like build up your coffers. Maybe you're gonna be able to like bring some club fees down, or like offer something more, hire some more club coaches or something like that. Like
more places, yeah, exactly.
Like, we see that professional model of like a club in other sports. Like, I'm sure that you grew up with soccer clubs. This is the same as I do, where they run everything from like programs to sending kids to the national team. Why can't we see that same model in volleyball?
Yeah. And I think it's something that we definitely need to look at and study and be like, okay, what's the difference and why? Yeah. Just, I don't know. I think it's definitely, it starts with conversations, right? And I think this is kind of when you messaged me, I was like, awesome. This is the kind of stuff that we need to start doing, to just make people realize that it could be better. It could be a lot better. And there's so much, I keep saying this to everybody, like, I'm excited. I'm genuinely like pumped about just the room for growth, right, and development for volleyball in Canada. There's so much room,
massive amounts of room.
We're already doing all right, in most categories we're doing a really good job. We have some athletes like that are making a name for themselves, right, and matching up with some other of the best athletes in the world, right? But I think that we could definitely do more.
Yeah, I think that, you know, if And I've kind of been on this soapbox for a while. I remember when I was in Winnipeg back in 2019 for the Norseca Championships, I was talking to Jared Brown, who runs the 204 Club, which is like the top boys club there. And he was like, you know, like, what do we need to be doing? And I was like, dude, like, you need to be starting a 4-on-4 league for your younger age groups, you know? And they have like school and like middle school volleyball and like is such a big thing in Winnipeg. And I think that you could definitely put that into, you know, those models where maybe you're just touching the ball once a week, but it's better than not touching the ball at all, right? It's better than not knowing volleyball doesn't exist until, you know, your school teacher shows you with those rock hard Wilson balls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. I fully agree.
Now, I want to change gears here real quick to talk about a conversation that you were a part of. Recently, it was a part of Black History Month, and it was a part of a bunch of young, and they were all female Black coaches from across Canada. So I'd really kind of hear kind of about your take on that conversation and kind of, you know, the role of women in color as coaches in the country.
Mm-hmm. First off, like, the meeting for me was just kind of empowering, like sitting there with like a bunch of other people, like other awesome coaches that have made a difference for volleyball in Canada, and sitting, or not necessarily beside, but across, from people like Shanice Marcel, who I remember when I was a kid, I went to every single local Trinity Western UBC game. Like, and I'm not talking when they played each other. I'm talking like if they were home, I was there. If they were home, I was there. And I loved her. Right. And I didn't want to be a hitter. So it wasn't that, right? It definitely was that I could look up to her and be like, she looks like me, you know? And it kind of gives you that perspective where it's like, if she can do it, I can do it. Right. I loved her hair. I loved everything about her. And so to be on the same call as her was kind of like, wow, this is kind of cool. So in the beginning, to be honest, I was a little bit confused. I was like, are we going to just Zoom and get to know each other and have like these empowering conversations? Is that what this is? But it's more of a mentorship program. And it's kind of community outreach. For me here, like, we were just chatting about like, okay, so how many in a sport of volleyball, there's not that much color. It's a sport where there's not a ton. We were all talking about like, okay, have we all been the token Black one on the team? Yes, we all have. And so it's kind of just recognizing that and kind of putting ourselves back into our shoes when we were younger and thinking like, who did we look up to? right? So just recognizing that we're in that position now where younger athletes of color, whether like color or not, look up to us, right? And we have an important role in their lives and in their development, just as athletes and as humans. So yeah, it's been a really cool process. We had another meeting with it was all the volleyball coaches, so male and female. And we met up with kind of the head basketball side of it. And I think, it's really just a community. It's because there's no database for us, right? So now it's like if there's a job posting for someone of color, they're looking for some kind of diversity. We have a whole everybody's there. There's some kind of database, which is kind of cool. So it's definitely it's been empowering for sure, and it was never something that I had kind of on my radar until they kind of reached out to me, which was really cool.
Now, you mentioned the whiteness of volleyball, and I 100% agree. Volleyball is very white. However, I do find that the past decade, especially, that has been changing drastically. And I think, even looking at my personal experience, when I played in the OVA, for example, in 2010, very, very white, overwhelmingly white, like white socks, white shoes, like white sneakers type of white. But then a couple years down the road, we see all of these clubs. And I mean, my experience here in Ontario is a little bit different, but clubs like Pac-Man, or clubs like the Scarborough Titans, and we're starting to see that influx of color. And I've really found that has upped the game quite a bit, because they've just brought in different perspectives, different backgrounds, different swag. Like, they brought in a little bit of swag. I won't lie. Like, the drip on the court used to be very not, it used to be just straight Asics and Mizuno. It wasn't looking good. And then, we brought a little color into the game, and now kids look good on the court.
That's what it's all about. No.
I mean, look good, feel good, play good. Like, it's an important thing.
Yeah, it is important. Yeah, no, it's definitely, I've noticed it too. Like when I played, I had one teammate who was colored. We went to school together. We just played together throughout most of our club years and school years. But just look at, even we go to tournaments and we kind of look around, and if there was another one, like, you also play. But I think that community, and I think it's just because it's more exposed. We're seeing, when I played, to be honest, I didn't know pro was really an option until Alicia Perrin went pro. And I'm not that much younger than Alicia Perrin. So I think it's just an exposure, right? The social media, we're seeing, like your page, we're seeing colored athletes doing it, right? Like Shana, we're seeing people doing it. So we're like,
Alexa, Alicia Ogum,
this is for us too.
Brandy.
Exactly. That's the mentality where it's like, we see ourselves there and we're like, yeah, okay, this sport's for us too. And I think that's kind of what's getting the engagement a little bit more at a younger age.
Do you think that maybe part of the hesitance for maybe the reason that volleyball continues to be a white sport is because it's viewed as a white sport, and maybe some people of color might like look down on it and maybe want to pick something like basketball or football or soccer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's definitely a factor. I think for me, we were chatting just a little bit on the Zoom call, just about the expense of playing, right? I think that's a huge thing. I think if you look at soccer, for example, it's a lot cheaper. It's a cheaper sport. You can just go with your pops and play on the field. Volleyball, you can play in your backyard, but if you really want to succeed at it, you're going to have to be in a gym. You have to be surrounded by a number of other athletes. And so I think the costs, it definitely are a factor.
This is part of the reason why I'm such a huge proponent about house leagues, right? Because if you can have that at a low cost, where you can have someone who's like, maybe that's a situation where they come in and you see how physically gifted they are, you see how much they love it, and that's an opportunity for a club to step in and be like, hey, look, we know that you love this. Maybe we can help you out somewhere. Maybe you can come back and help us coach these younger programs, and that can help pay for your club fees.
When there's a will, there's a way. Right. I think we see that. We'll see someone step in the gym and be like, okay, you got it. Like, what can we do to support you if you can't be in here every week training? Is there a trade-off? Like, we're lucky enough to have a facility we can run things whenever we want to. And so is there a trade-off? Is there another option? Can you help us? We can help you. And then even what you said before, just the numbers, okay, well, 45 kids in a gym, you're obviously going to bring in some revenue. Can you use some of that revenue to help some families that can't afford it? So I think to me, that's the biggest part of it. Yeah,
absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I I grew up playing in Ottawa, and if you know anything about Ottawa volleyball, you know that the best volleyball players come from the poorest part of town, right? And they come from one of the lowest income areas in Ottawa. And so that you're going to play Ottawa, you're going to have a few kids in your team who come from a rough place. Not many people know this, but Stephen Harper's son actually played volleyball. And he went to Glashan, and basically they ended up supporting a whole bunch of kids throughout their entire club career. Like a bunch of whom who went to go play university, a bunch of whom who went to go play club, and like I've seen how much of an impact someone, and I had kids on my team who the same way too. You know, like I 100% remember like the token black kid on my team was O'Shane Clark, and I remember him coming to stay at my house, and I was by very modest means that I grew up with, and seeing how he reacted, and it was just a very big wake up call that like, dude, like you and I come from very different places right now, and you know. My focus on volleyball isn't, and my like me making it my number one priority might not be the same thing for you, even though you are so good.
Like you can't afford to make it your top priority.
Yeah,
versus
100%. And I still remember like the ignorance of some of the players' parents, and being like, well, to me it's weird that like he has a cell phone, but he can't afford to pay for volleyball and stuff like that, and just like being like listening to this and being like, holy shit, like I'm young and even I know that this is wrong what you guys are talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think too that like sport is such like the dressing room is such like an equalizing place. It's such a place to like learn about people. It's such a place to kind of like bring down walls and bring down barriers. And I think it's like super important that if you have like for our teams to be as almost like as homogenous as not homogenous. Isn't that the same? As different as different as possible.
Yeah, that exposure. Yeah, no, I agree, and I think like we had just one experience the other week where we had a couple athletes that were like, "Oh, where's this kid been? Where's this kid been? Why are they not at practice?" I'm like, "Okay, let me handle this, guys. You never know what's going on in that person's life. You have no idea what is going on with those athletes' lives that are not here right now. Like I bet you they would want to be." If they could be, especially during COVID. I've had so many parents message me just being like, our practice is still on. That's the only thing my kid looks forward to. Right. So I'm like, they would be here if they could be. Right. So we need to kind of just remember always like, we don't know what's going on in people's lives. I think it's always a good reminder.
So is coaching like is it your full-time gig now?
Yeah.
And is that what you're going to be doing full-time? Because I'm a huge proponent of that. I think we need more people like you, but more women like you kind of like on the ground doing the work in the communities. I think that's great.
Yeah, no, there was a lot kind of going on for me just last summer. And then this job kind of popped up, and I told Dave, I was like, listen, I've kind of been won over. I did at the time, I was convinced I was going to play one more year. And that one more year was, to be honest, going to be just so my family could come to Europe. And then COVID kind of hit, and that kind of didn't really plan out. But this place won me over, right? And I think, it was kind of like, this is what I want to do. I had been coaching. I'd done a lot of club stuff. I had helped out with our Trinity Western Spartan camps. And I'd worked kind of summer at the Oval and for their camps and their private lessons. And I enjoyed it, but it wasn't the same. The fire had not been lit yet. And I think now it's kind of like, I'm passionate about this. Like I really I'll like yesterday I was here probably until 8:00. And I think I went home and edited video till midnight just for fun. Like I do enjoy it. Like it's
just for fun, eh?
I feel extremely lucky that I'm 25 and I found something that I love.
I definitely feel you there. Is like coaching university, like on your prospects, or are you just kind of going with the flow and figuring it out as you go?
Well, it's been, I remember at the beginning when I first got this job, Dave kind of asked like, okay, so what's your favorite number like to coach? Like, do you like 8? Do you like 12? Do you like 16? Like, what's your favorite number? And I was like, I don't know. Or like, what's your favorite? Do you like positional camps? Do you like just like high performance? Do you like young? And I was like, I don't know. Well, the last like 6 months, I've been kind of figuring that out. And I do like the development side of it. I don't think all coaches love the development side of volleyball. A lot of us will teach the game, which isn't a bad thing. But I think for me, I do love the development side of it. I think that's important at the young ages. It's also important at the older ages. but I definitely, there is a little piece of me that misses the team.
Yeah.
I talked to Dave about this. It's been conversations like, how can I get a team? I can't really be associated with clubs. I won't be associated with clubs. I'm just Volleybox. How can I have a team? And so it's been a discussion, like, are there any local teams that I could help out with? Or so it's something, I don't know. Right now, the focus is here. That I'm not going to lie, it's all here. But yeah, I hope that sometime in the future, it could look something like kind of just throwing an all-star team together in the summer and going somewhere. That could be my team. So I think, yeah, right now I've replaced it with playing soccer. So I still have that fix of a team. But yeah, I definitely would like to have a team eventually. But that's right now,
that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
How about this? You coach a team. You coach Team Vancouver. I'll coach a team here in Toronto. And we'll both stay separate from clubs, and then we'll meet up in the middle and like Winnipeg or something. Have a good old battle. We'll live stream it.
Love it. Let's do it.
We'll get. Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure Dave can help us finance it too. It'll be great.
He'll probably be like, "Can we do it tomorrow?"
Actually, you know what? I'm sure we wouldn't even need to meet in the middle because Dave would love to have it at the Volleybox. I need COVID to end, or I need a reason to come to Vancouver so I can come check out the Volleybox.
Hey, our doors are always open for you.
Yeah, I'm sure you're just, a few 6,000 kilometers away.
Yeah, a little trek.
Yeah. Real quick, I just kind of want to talk about, we haven't talked about it yet, but I do want to talk about your national championship run because it was here in Toronto, and I had the extreme pleasure of commentating it. And it's always great because every now and again, Trinity Western will put out these little snippets from that run, and it's always my voice on it. And it was good times, and I enjoyed watching you guys play that weekend.
Yeah, I remember that there was kind of a moment in the final where it was like, we got this, and it was. I'm gonna tell you right now, we were down 2-0. So we had to come back and win 3 in a row. And it was during the deficit where that kind of clicked. I think it was in the third set where we just were like, we were hot. Everything we did was good. And I think, in that moment, we kind of we had a huddle at one point. It was just like, we kind of looked at each other's eyes like, this is our game. We just have to take it. We just have to perform. And so there was a lot of confidence. Definitely a lot of confidence. I think that's important. And good confidence, not the bad kind. And I think it was, for me, I was in my second year. So I really had kind of just found my rhythm a little bit. My first year, I kind of played 50-50, I would say. Even up to nationals, I really didn't know who was going to start. Mm-hmm. And then second year, our other setter had hurt her back a little bit. I think I had sprained my ankle the second game of the season. And so I was playing on a sprained ankle the whole season. The next game, the next night was just football tape. My dad was like, "You're good, football tape." I demanded perfect passes for a while, so I think that might have helped. I'm pretty immobile. Our second ball setting got a little bit better because our libero had to help out a little bit more. But yeah, no, it was an experience for sure. I think, honestly, the Can West was the first glimpse of winning for Trinity Western. We had never won Can West before. We had never won nationals before, but that was our first glimpse of winning. And when we won that, it was like, okay, if we do this, and we're doing it in Can West, which is pretty prestigious, we can do this at nationals. And we did the exact same thing.
That was such a slugger of a team. Sophie Carpentier, Alicia Perrin, Ellie Wendell. It was, and I still remember all of the sellies you guys had on the bench too. Sorry, what'd you say there?
I said Ellie Wendell made defense easy. Her and Alicia Perrin, Katie Devaney, people said I was good at defense, but did you see the block I had in front of me?
That was a very, very big block. But it seemed like, looking at your bench, and I mean, whenever those highlight packages comes up, it's always me talking about the bench. It seemed like you guys as a squad were so tight. And it seemed like it's very indicative of Trinity Western squads, whether it's on the men and the women's side. But, we talk a lot about Trinity Western men on this show, obviously, because they win as much as they do. But the women are just as good. Last year, both the men and women won again. So what is so special about that program? Because we've got quite a few blah, 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 blah. Second podcast of the day. It's getting a little bit long here, but there's quite a bit of talent that has come out of that Trinity Western women's program.
Mm-hmm. And I think for the bench side of it, it's realizing you got to stay engaged the whole time. right? You have to recognize that at any point you could be thrown on the court, and the best way to stay engaged is to be cheering and pumping your teammates up and be involved in the game, right? Because you do see those games where there's a separation between the starting six and the six that are off. So just kind of essentially trying to get those two to mesh as much as you can is important. And I think we did a really good job of it that year. And I think they've kind of carried it over through the last 5 as well. And just kind of having that camaraderie between the people that are playing and the people that are on the bench right now. And we had a bunch of subs that were coming in and out. Like we had Carly Hamilton that was going in and out to serve a bunch and play for Royal in the back row. Rachel Flink, who was in and out of the game. Like there were a number of girls from the sideline that were actually seeing the court in the final. And that helps. That always helps. But yeah, I think it's just recognizing that engagement is important. And like, even for me, like in my sports career, I didn't spend a ton of time on the bench. If you were to throw me on the bench, I wouldn't know how to be there. Right. But it's a part of the game that's really important. Right. And I don't think we don't take it seriously enough, but we kind of made it a goal that year. Like how are we going to stay in tune? I want the people on the bench. My backup setter needs to be giving me information. Right. They need to be watching the game. Like, Nick, you have a free dump. Okay. Every time you do this, they release to 4. You should be sending to 2. Right. This person's one-on-one. Katie's open in the middle every time. Feed her. Like that communication, I think, is also important. So we had a ton of that. Anytime we come off the bench, you communicate with the person that was kind of would replace you. And then it'd be a team meeting. There was always that interaction between athletes. And I think that, again, that with cheering and getting involved was essential.
Was that athlete driven or was that coach driven? Like, was that like a mandate that, like Ryan and the coaching staff talked about at the beginning of the season, or was that something that you guys developed amongst yourselves?
I think it was addressed pretty early on. Just like, hey, this needs to be better. How can we make it better? And then it was a team effort just to, okay, well, on the sideline, I feel this. And like, of course, it sucks to be on this. You want to be on the court. Okay, well, how can we make you feel like you're on the court? How can we make you feel like you're a part of this, like winning this championship? Because that was always the end goal, right? And I think that's a huge difference that I found between playing university, college, or playing professionally, was that the goal at college was, I want to win for my teammates. I want to win the title. I don't care about the accolades. I don't even know what I got in university. It really, like when I got MVP at that tournament, I had no idea what I got. I literally was on that line and I heard my name and I was like, somebody, what happened? Like, I didn't even know there was MVP. It wasn't on my radar, Yeah. And I think when you go overseas, it does definitely change. It becomes a little bit more of a career. The focus kind of shifts, but for sure there, it was like, I just want to win for my teammates.
Do you think in some ways that university volleyball is like peak volleyball?
You said peak volleyball?
Peak, like the best volleyball.
No, not here.
Fair. But like, even in terms of like me watching the NCAA and stuff like that, like I like watching the NCAA and U Sports sometimes more than I like watching women's and men's pro volleyball.
Mm-hmm, that's fair. And I think that might be like at the women's level. I can only speak to the women's, but just because like the length of the rallies last a little bit longer. At the higher levels, it's like you're going to get some. That's why, like for me personally, I love watching the women's game because I love rallies. Mm-hmm. Men's game, there's a little bit less rallying going on, so it's a little bit less entertaining and engaging from my perspective. But yeah, I think that might be a factor in why I feel like it's like, oh, this is actually more fun to watch college, university athletes play than pro. Or it might just be the fact that you're all in it together, right? And there's a piece of that you see on the court where it's like, I don't know, I'm in this for you versus pro. It does change a little bit.
It's funny that you bring that up because do you think maybe it's because of the sub rule in the NCAA? And like, I actually think that this is like a thing that we should be looking at in women's volleyball specifically, or not specifically, especially in women's volleyball, maybe even in men's volleyball as well too, that like the best product that we have is NCAA women's volleyball. And that there's a big significant difference in the number of subs that they're allowed, and that the allowance of that double sub rule where you're adding more defensive specialists, so you're going to prolong rallies, you're going to bring up ball control, but you're also allowing your top hitters to have a little bit of rest, just like we see in basketball, just like we see in football or hockey, and volleyball's an anaerobic sport. You're supposed to be explosive. So for me, I think that if we started looking at changing the sub rule to an NCAA model, we might see that prolongation of rally and maybe up the excitement level in the international pro game. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of pros that would come out of that, like positive things that would come out of it. And the first is just I don't know, I feel like that it adds something new to the game when someone new comes on, right? Versus watching the same six, you know what you're going to get, you know what to expect. A new one comes on, you're like, ooh, what's she good at? You know? And I think it's also playing into people's strengths, right? That I think, yeah, it would make the game better, right? Like if you're going to throw on a defensive specialist who's going to dig up every ball, like you said, and keep the rallies going and just make it that much more entertaining. I also think for the sake of a team, you're getting more athletes on the court.
100%. And I think that division between, like in volleyball, there's very much like in basketball, we'll talk about like the starting, you know, you've got the starting five, but then you've got like, you know, you've got a bench that's 9 deep. In volleyball, there's very much that division other than like a double sub or like a defensive rotation. It's so hard to get people in, right? I think it would just allow such more free flowing play if we allowed more subs to bring more people in and out and, allow more space with that.
Is that we found like at Trinity as well, like you'd have your starting six play against your bench, right? And it'd be hard to be challenged on the starting side. And I think like if you're getting those people in the game, they're going to have confidence. They're going to bring it to practice. Practice is going to get better. Volleyball's going to get better. So I think, yeah, it's a whole, like it's just a cycle. But yeah, I think overall, I think that getting more people on the court would definitely, we also saw it at Trinity where like, if you don't play for 3-4 years, you're kind of like, this sucks. You know, like how do we keep people engaged? How do we keep them wanting to play and put in how many hours a week, a day to train? Right? We had a bunch that went through their full 4 or 5 years and didn't see the court. But if had they seen it in their first year and developed that confidence, right, then they over the next 4 years and just become,
100%. I mean, we were talking about it. I thought I'd bring it up with you because you're a smart person and I respect your opinion on these things. So, and you said the right answers too. So thank you. If you hadn't said the right answers, I would have cut that part and not posted it.
Okay.
I'm joking. I'm joking, obviously. Well, dude, we're getting to the end here. That's kind of like my list of questions. Is there anything that you want to break up that I didn't touch on? You're like, man, I really want to talk about this.
I am curious. It's a conversation I've been having a little bit more just in the volleyball world about like what we think about athletes going to play in the States. There's a lot of coaches that I've spoken to that are like, no, Canada, Canada, Canada. Some people are like, no, go to the States, go to the States, go to the States. Where are you sit?
First off, I had this exact conversation with Jen Cross yesterday on my podcast with her. And
I can sits.
Pardon?
I said I can guess where she sits.
Actually, she had a very, very good answer. And it's very much my answer as well, too. I think that certain athletes will thrive in the States and that there is no denying that the States is going to give you a different experience. And I have no problem saying that the States is probably going to give you a more high performance experience if that is what you're looking for, right? You aren't going to be able to get a full ride just based off of volleyball going to a university school. Right, that's a Canadian school. That's the first and foremost. So for some athletes, we talked about the accessibility. For some athletes, they can only go to the States, right, because they can't afford to pay that other half of their tuition here. And I think that if you have the opportunity to go to a school like a Stanford or a Nebraska or like a Pac-12, a Big Ten, like one of these big programs, I think the NCAA is the best proving ground, bar none, for volleyball in the world on the women's side. I think on the men's side, U Sports may be just as good as the NCAA, but like that's between you and me.
Now I fully agree with you and all that. You and Jen, we'll put Jen in there.
However, I do definitely agree that it's not for everyone, and that if there is. It's a different culture and a different experience than what we're used to here in Canada, and you have to be very, very much ready for it. But also is that I don't think necessarily like just going D1 is necessarily better than going to U Sports, And even if you're going to one of those top schools, it's like, what type of experience are you going to have? What type of athlete are you? And I do know in the past, and this is going back a while, that there was like a strict no NCAA policy for the women's national team. Like I have friends of mine who, are a little bit older now, who went and played at places like Purdue and then went and played in Italy professionally and were never even given a sniff at the women's national team. Right. So, I understand that, but I think that it's more so, it's really what's best for you. But I think in general, the U Sports is a much more viable option than people think, and especially recently, like the quality of coaching that is coming in, like the young coaches that we have coming into U Sport are just making it better, and we're only getting stronger.
Mm-hmm. I agree with what you guys kind of both think. Kind of paraphrasing her as well. For me, I think that like every athlete's writing their own story. Like it's going to be different. You can't just tell everybody, hey, you should go here, you should go here. It's different for every individual athlete. For me personally, I definitely have taken on a little bit of a challenge in kind of what you mentioned before. Can I prepare them for that? Because I think as coaches here, we have a responsibility to prep them for that level and that intensity. I don't think we do a good enough job of that. I think a majority of us are very Canadian coaches. We're all very nice. We're all very
100%.
Yeah. So I think for me, it's definitely like, I agree with you guys. Like, I think that, the NCAA D1, D2, like it's strong. It's obviously strong. That's where I think we should be kind of aiming, and that's what we should be prepping for. And if it's not to say that U Sport's bad. U Sport's awesome.
Kira Van Rijk,
Yeah. Exactly. So I think
yourself.
Yeah, from a coaching perspective, like I think regardless of where they want to go or what they end up doing, can I do my part to prep them for the highest level for college?
Absolutely. And I have this conversation, and I mean, like if you look at what some of the top kids at 16, 17, 18 years old. And I know this is a little bit weird because we've started the conversation at like minis and not high performance. and now we're back to the high performance, but like, I don't think, and it's weird because we focus so much on high performance, but we don't necessarily do as much as other sports are doing in those high performance settings, right? If you look at a top recruit for volleyball at 16 years old versus a top recruit for hockey at 16 years old, two vastly different things, right? Yeah. Like the volleyball kid might still be just doing 2 practices a week for 2 hours.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think there needs to be a system for them. Right. Those ones that how can we support you? How can we make you better? Like we recognize that you have the potential to support our national team, support volleyball in Canada. Right. And I think that kind of preparation, like when we think about like going to university, whether it be in the United States or here, the way I see it is like if we prep them and kind of get more involvement in those younger ages, kind of like hockey or other sports, and they do go to the States, it's going to make Canada better. Like I think they're going to come back and I look at all our Team Canada girls that have played in the States. They are now back here making volleyball better. They go overseas, we come back, we make it better. So.
Yeah. And I mean, like for me, like part of that conversation is it partly because of how late we start, right? Because when I was playing rep soccer at U10, I had already been playing soccer for 6 years. When I was trying out, pardon?
There's almost not enough time to kind of get those things just cramped.
Right. Whereas in volleyball, if you start at 14, have I been in the sport long enough at that point to realize kind of what's in my future? Like, and that's why I think if we're getting these kids in younger at ages 6, 7, 8 years old, and once they hit 12, once at that 17 or 16 age, they've already been playing for a decade, that level of not commitment, but like drive might be higher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree with you there.
Just to tie it back all together, because I think we're both in agreement here that focusing on the grassroots development should be a priority of this country. I would really like to see Carrie McDonald. I know you listen to my shit, so I want to see you kind of work on this stuff. James Dedden, you too, buddy.
Everybody, it's a team effort. Really is a team effort.
It is a team effort, and this is like. Once we get on, this is why I'd love to see it be like a mandate from like Volleyball Canada or like a provincial association where being like, hey guys, let's focus on, who's going to create the best developmental system, because guess what? We're already winning high performance, right? We are already like our best club players, like I fully believe at like the club level, like our best players can go against the best players in the States, right? They may have on the women's side, they have quite a few more girls playing than us just based off of population. But like at that level, like I think if you break it down at that level, like we could go as good at like player for player, we go for them. They just have more of them.
Yeah. We're outnumbered for sure. And we will be.
100%.
But yeah, no, definitely starting younger ages, it's gonna file through everything we've talked about. We just do a better job. And like you're saying, like with Volleyball Canada, can we give us a template? It would help. And I think, like, not to say you have to follow it, not to say we would follow it, but it would be nice to have a template, because the only time you really hear from Volleyball Canada is at nationals or when they want you to try out for NEP.
They want
or the youth programs. Like they don't do anything for the younger age groups.
And it's even more frustrating when I watch the Raptors and when you watch, like Bianca in tennis, and like in the ads, like Basketball Canada is promoting like mini basketball. Tennis Canada is promoting mini tennis. Like they are, not only are they actively doing it, but they're actively promoting it on a large platform. We have Mel and Sarah winning world championships. How many kids is that turning into mini volleyball?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And promoting is a huge thing. Like your account, like what you do is you're doing more than Volleyball Canada. I think you could ask a lot of parents that come through this facility, and you'd be like, hey, ask them a question. Where does Volleyball Canada train for women's? I would be shocked if like 1 out of 10 knew it was in Richmond.
Trust me, ask a bunch of kids in Ottawa about the men's team, and they wouldn't be able to know too. It's just across the road, across the river in Gatineau. It's frustrating for me when the Serbian national team comes to Ottawa for Nations League, and they're there one weekend, and the Serbian community has a whole event set up for them, and they go and they meet the community, and the men's national team hasn't been able to do that once with the community in Ottawa, or the women's national team has never been, like, other than like a few like little barbecues here and there before, like red and white, like, how many times have they been able to do like outreach programs with like clubs or schools or whatever in the area?
Yes, I guess what I'm trying to say is thank you for doing what you do, because we need that. We need you.
I do it because I have fun with it, and I get to talk to amazing people like you. So that's the benefit for me.
Hey, but we appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Okay. Well, I mean that was great. I really appreciate you coming on and chatting about me. Now it's getting into my head. See, this is why I didn't want you to thank me like that, chatting with me about this, and I definitely think that we should continue this conversation. Maybe not next week, but kind of in the future, because I think it's definitely a very, very important one to have. And I have to say that like the kids in Vancouver are so lucky to have someone like you. Like I can feel how infectious your love for coaching is through Instagram, and I'm on the other side of the country, so like I absolutely love that. And you know what, like I hope that if you are, it doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man, a girl or a boy, and if you're thinking about coaching, like do it. I promise you it'll be the best thing that you've ever done. Especially if you're a mediocre athlete like me, you will love it. Super
rewarding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, guys.
3-hour.
Yes, absolutely. Guys, that was very blah 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 blah. This is number 2 of the day, and my mouth is not working as well. Guys, thank you very much to Vanessa Cornwall once again, calling in from the Volleybox in just outside of Vancouver, BC. Great conversation today about kind of development and just a whole bunch of stuff. So Vanessa, thank you very much. That was great.
No problem. Thank you.
Or Nikki. Is it Nikki or Vanessa?
Vanessa's legal. Nikki's like,
Because that's why. You know what screwed me up though is because you changed your name on Instagram to Coach Cornwall.
Huh?
Yeah, and so I was like, I thought her name was Nikki, and then I looked you up on Volleybox, and then it said Vanessa, and I was just like, okay, I guess it's Vanessa.
Even like games when I started at Trinity, it was always Vanessa. I didn't hear it when I play. I didn't really pay attention. My parents were always like, you need to change that. I'm like, change what? But it doesn't really.
All right.
Anything.
I got to go back to the beginning of this podcast now and change it. All right, Nikki, thank you very much. We will talk to you again soon. Have a great rest of the day. Guys, thanks again. Peace.
Bye.